It wasn't a stranger who ruined me, it was my own sister. I still remember the sound of the glass breaking that night. The dinner table fell silent, but my world had already shattered. For years, my family saw me as their pride, the example every cousin was told to follow. My father would smile at guests and say, "Maya never gives us a reason to bow our heads." And I believed him, until my own blood turned my secret into a story for everyone to judge. Sarah wasn't evil. At least that's what I used to tell myself. She was just desperate to be seen, to be loved the way I was. But sometimes jealousy doesn't scream, it whispers. It smiles in your face while digging a knife in your back. I've spent months replaying that moment. The moment she looked at me, smiled, and said words that stripped away everything I'd built. "You shouldn't have hidden it, Maya," she said sweetly. "I just wanted them to know the truth." But the truth didn't set me free. It destroyed me, and it destroyed her, too. In our house, reputation was everything. My father, Farid Khan, built his life around what people thought of us, our neighbors, our relatives, even the ones who secretly envied him. My mother, Layla, followed his lead, always reminding us that respect begins at home. And for years, I was the example of that respect, the quiet, disciplined daughter who made them proud. Every morning felt like a performance. We'd sit at breakfast together, my father reading the newspaper, my mother fussing about the tea, and my younger sister Sarah chatting endlessly about her social life. I'd listen, smile, nod, and pretend I didn't notice the way my father's face lit up whenever Sarah spoke. "Maya, you're too serious," he would say without looking up. "You should learn to relax like your sister." I would laugh softly, though something inside me always tightened. Sarah had a way of drawing attention without trying. Her laughter filled the house, her presence brightened every room. And I was the quiet one. The one who got things done, but never got noticed for it. At family dinners, my mother would gush about Sarah's charm. "She knows how to talk to people," she'd say proudly. "Everyone loves her." Then, turning to me, she'd add, "And Maya, of course, is our responsible one." Responsible. That word became my title, my cage. Still, I didn't complain. I wanted peace, not praise. I told myself love doesn't have to be loud, that my parents' pride was enough. But sometimes, silence hurts more than insults. Especially when your sister's smallest success earns applause, while your quiet sacrifices are forgotten the moment they happen. Sarah and I used to be close when we were younger. We'd share clothes, whisper secrets under the blanket, and promise never to hurt each other. But as we grew, something changed. She began competing, not for achievements, but for attention. I remember one evening, during a family gathering, our Aunt Saba pulled Sarah aside, smiling knowingly. "She's pretty, but you're lively," she whispered to her, loud enough for me to hear. "Your parents adore you more." "Maya's too cold." Sarah glanced at me and smiled, not kindly, but victoriously. After that night, she didn't just want love. She wanted to win it. I tried to hold the family together, ignoring the cracks beneath the laughter. My brother, Raza, often warned me, "You let her get away with too much, Maya. One day, she'll cross a line you can't forgive." I brushed it off. "She's my sister." She wouldn't. But I should have listened. Because behind the dinners, the smiling photos, and the perfect image my father loved to show off, something dark was growing between us. A quiet envy. A hunger for attention. And one night, that hunger would cost me everything. It started so simply, I almost missed it, the moment my secret slipped into Sarah's hands. I had been seeing a therapist for months, quietly, after my anxiety attacks became too heavy to hide. To everyone else, I was perfect, calm, collected, unbreakable. But alone, I was fighting just to breathe. My sessions were the only place I didn't have to smile. One afternoon, I came home early from work. My phone had been buzzing with messages, so I set it down on the table while I made tea. When I returned, Sarah was sitting on the couch, scrolling through my messages. She looked up, startled but unapologetic. "What's this, Maya?" she asked, her voice light but sharp. "Therapy sessions? Are you depressed or something?" My chest tightened. "That's private, Sarah. Give me my phone." She laughed softly. "Relax. I'm just worried. You know how Baba would react if he found out you've been hiding something like this? He hates weakness." Her words cut deeper than she knew. I snatched my phone and walked away, but something in her tone stayed with me. Curiosity, mixed with opportunity. That night, I overheard her in the kitchen, whispering to our mother. "Emmy, Maya's been acting strange. I think she's hiding something serious." I froze in the hallway. My mother sighed, tired. "Don't make up stories, Sarah." But Sarah didn't stop. She began planting doubts. Small, poisonous comments slipped into conversations. Maya looked pale again today. "She's not focusing lately. Maybe the engagement is stressing her out." And just like that, the whispers started spreading, from my mother to my aunt, from my aunt to the neighbors. Soon, my father began treating me differently. He'd study me across the dinner table, his tone colder. "Maya, if something's wrong, tell me. I don't like surprises." "There's nothing wrong," I'd insist, keeping my voice steady. But his eyes told me he didn't believe me. Even my fiancé, Imran, noticed the change. He started asking questions he never used to. "Why are you always tired? Did something happen at work?" I'd smile and say, "Just stress." But his silence after told me he was doubting, too. Meanwhile, Sarah thrived in the glow of false concern. She began helping Emmy with chores, complimenting Baba on his choices, and acting like the perfect daughter. The contrast was cruelly clear. At one family dinner, she put her hand on mine and said sweetly, "I just hope Maya's okay. She's been fragile lately." The table went quiet. My father's fork clattered against the plate. "What does that mean?" he demanded. Sarah lowered her eyes in fake guilt. "Nothing, Baba. I shouldn't have said anything." But she had said enough. After that night, I noticed the way everyone started watching me. Cautious, judgmental, whispering when they thought I couldn't hear. The walls of my own home began to feel like a courtroom. One evening, I confronted her in my room. "Why are you doing this, Sarah? You said you'd never tell anyone." She crossed her arms. "I didn't tell. I just hinted. Maybe they deserve to know who you really are." "Who I really am?" I asked, my voice shaking. "A person who feels pain? That's my crime." She smiled faintly. "No, Maya. Your crime is pretending to be perfect when you're not." Something in me cracked. I realized then, she wasn't trying to help me. She was trying to replace me. That night, my mother called me aside. "Whatever this is between you two, fix it quietly. Your father's image cannot be stained." Image. That word again. Not heart. Not family. Image. I nodded silently, but inside, something broke for good. Cliffhanger. Because the next time Sarah spoke about me, she wouldn't just hint, she would expose everything, in front of everyone I loved. After that night, nothing in our house felt the same. The silence wasn't peaceful anymore, it was heavy, waiting to explode. Every smile carried suspicion, every conversation had an edge. I began to notice the shift in my parents' tone, the tiny pauses, the cautious glances they exchanged when I entered a room. My father's words grew clipped, cold. My mother's warmth turned into polite distance. It was subtle at first. Missed calls from relatives I once spoke to often. Invitations forgotten. Even at breakfast, the seat beside Sarah was always filled, while mine was left at the corner, like I was slowly fading out of the picture. And Sarah, she was blooming. She had learned how to perform concern so convincingly that even I began to question my reality. She would hover near my mother, whispering softly, pretending to care. "I just think she's not herself lately," she'd murmur. "Maybe we should keep an eye on her." And my mother, exhausted from worrying about what the world thought, would sigh and nod. "Maybe you're right, Sarah. Poor Maya's always so tense." Each word stabbed quietly, and yet I said nothing. I told myself silence was strength. But silence, I learned, can also be a slow death. The worst came during our cousin's engagement ceremony, a big family event, full of laughter, music, and the kind of happiness that feels staged. I had barely arrived when Aunt Saba pulled me aside, lowering her voice like she was delivering tragic news. "Beta, you're so pale these days. You should rest. You look unwell." Her eyes glittered with curiosity, not concern. Before I could respond, Sarah appeared, smiling sweetly. "Oh, don't worry, Auntie. Maya's just been under a lot of emotional stress." The way she said it, slow, deliberate, turned every head nearby. A few cousins exchanged knowing glances. Someone whispered. I stood frozen, my cheeks burning, heart pounding in my ears. My father, standing across the room, caught the tail end of it, his expression hardening instantly. When we got home that night, he called me into the living room. Is there something I should know, Maya? His voice was calm, too calm. No, Baba, I said quietly. There's nothing wrong with me. He leaned forward. Then stop giving people reasons to talk. That sentence broke me in ways no insult could. He didn't defend me. He didn't even ask what Sarah meant. He just didn't want embarrassment. Later that night, I stood in front of the mirror, staring at my reflection. The dark circles, the tired eyes, the quiet sadness. For the first time, I saw what they saw, a woman who had become invisible in her own home. Days turned into weeks. Sarah grew bolder. Once, at dinner, when my father praised her for helping with the family business, she smiled and said, I just want to take care of everything, especially when Maya's too fragile to handle pressure. The laughter that followed felt like glass shattering in my chest. I looked at her, and for a split second, our eyes met. She didn't even look sorry. That night, I went to my room, locked the door, and let the anger finally breathe. My hands trembled as I whispered to myself, she's turning everyone against me. My best friend, Nida, was the only one I could confide in. She's not just jealous, Nida said. She's dangerous. She wants to break you so she can replace you. I didn't want to believe it, but deep down, I knew she was right. Then came the invitation, a formal family dinner organized by my father, meant to reaffirm family unity. The perfect excuse for Sarah to perform again. I could already feel it in my bones, the tension, the eyes, the whispers that would come. As I stood in front of the mirror, fixing my japata, I whispered, she won't stop until she wins. The night of the dinner still burns in my memory like an open wound. Everything looked perfect. The glittering lights, the carefully laid table, the scent of roses in the air. My father stood proudly at the head of the room, greeting guests, while Sarah floated around him like a reflection of everything he wanted his daughters to be, radiant, confident, obedient. I stood by the window, watching the scene unfold. Every sound felt distant, laughter, clinking glasses, soft music. My heart, however, was thundering in my chest. I didn't know why, but something inside me whispered that tonight wouldn't end quietly. When everyone had taken their seats, my father cleared his throat. Before we eat, he announced, I just want to say how proud I am of my children. Sarah especially, she's been a great support to the family lately. The applause that followed was polite, warm, and suffocating. I smiled faintly, but my stomach twisted. I caught Sarah's eye from across the room. She smiled, but it wasn't a smile. It was a promise. Halfway through the dinner, when the conversation turned to family accomplishments, Aunt Saba began her usual gossip. Our daughters are our pride, she said loudly. But you're lucky, Farid. Both your girls are so different, one graceful, one lively. My father chuckled. That's true. They balance each other out. Sarah leaned forward, her voice smooth as honey. Though sometimes it's hard to balance everything when someone isn't completely honest about their situation. Her words sliced through the room like a knife. My fork slipped from my hand, clattering against the plate. Every eye turned toward me. What do you mean? Aunt Saba asked eagerly. Sarah glanced at me, pretending guilt. I shouldn't say this, but I think it's time my parents knew. Maya's been hiding something serious. I froze. Sarah, stop. My voice cracked. She ignored me. She's been seeing a therapist. 4 months. She didn't tell anyone, not even her fiancé. She said she was afraid of disappointing you, Baba. The room fell silent. The air thickened. My father's smile vanished, his face turning pale with embarrassment and anger. My mother gasped softly, her hand trembling on her glass. Sarah, my father said slowly, is this true? Sarah lowered her head. I didn't want to say anything, Baba, but people have started talking. I thought you should know before it becomes a shameful topic outside this house. Laughter from the guests died instantly. The only sound left was the pounding of my heart. I could feel every pair of eyes on me, judging, questioning, whispering. I wanted to disappear. My throat tightened as I tried to speak, but no words came out. Finally, I managed to whisper. You had no right to tell them.
My father's voice was sharp.
Is it true?
I nodded, tears welling.
Yes, but it's not.
He slammed his hand on the table.
Enough.
Do you realize what this does to our name?
What people will think. I looked at him, stunned.
You're worried about what they think? Not about me.
My voice broke, but he didn't flinch. Sarah reached out, placing a hand on his shoulder.
She didn't mean harm, Baba.
She just needed help.
Her tone dripped with false concern.
And in that moment, the mask came off, for me, not for her. I saw the truth. She didn't want to help. She wanted to replace me. My fiancé, Imran, stood up slowly. Why didn't you tell me, Maya? I looked at him through blurred tears. Because I was afraid you'd see me as broken. He said nothing, just turned away.
The humiliation crushed me.
Every ounce of respect I'd built over years dissolved in a single moment.
The girl who had been their pride became their shame. My father's silence screamed louder than his words.
When the dinner ended, no one met my eyes. My mother avoided me. My father left the room, and she smiled faintly as she hugged guests goodbye. That night, I sat alone in my room, staring at the reflection of a woman I barely recognized, eyes swollen, spirit hollow. The house around me buzzed with whispers, and somewhere in the distance, Sarah's laughter echoed softly.
I thought about running away, about never coming back.
But something inside me, something small, almost buried, refused to die. For the first time in my life, I felt anger not as pain, but as power. I whispered to myself, they wanted perfection. I'll show them truth. I remembered the recording of my therapy sessions, the one where I spoke about my fear of not being good enough for my father. The one that revealed my humanity, not my weakness.
That night, I didn't cry anymore.
I sat in the dark, heart pounding, as the realization settled like cold steel in my chest.
Sarah thought she had destroyed me, but all she did was remove my disguise.
And from that moment, I wasn't afraid of the truth anymore. I would use it, not to beg for love, but to reclaim my dignity. After that night, grief sat in my bones like a slow winter. For a few days I moved like a ghost through my own life, feeding the dog, answering calls, smiling when needed. But grief can sharpen you. It taught me that pain could be steered, that anger, if focused, becomes a tool.
I stopped begging for sympathy. I started planning.
First, I rebuilt myself quietly. Nida became my anchor. She brought food, stayed up with me, and listened as I rehearsed things out loud until my voice no longer trembled. Raza, who had always watched too much from the sidelines, slipped me small truths about the house, who owed favors, which relatives loved gossip, and who would jump at the chance to smear someone for attention. He didn't approve of Sarah, but he had been afraid to step in. Now he offered to stand with me, not in front, but beside me. That mattered. I collected evidence the way a careful person gathers ammunition. The phone messages I'd never meant to keep, Sarah's flippant, proud texts, her conversations with Aunt Saba where she framed my therapy as scandal, the small notes where she bragged about fixing the family image. I wrote down dates and times when she had deliberately shifted opinion in the house. I saved the recording of my therapy session, the one where I admitted being terrified of letting my father down. I chose not to hide my vulnerability this time. I wanted it to be the thing that broke the lie, not the thing that broke me.
But I didn't want vengeance that looked like spite.
I wanted justice, a clean, undeniable exposure of motive. So the plan needed shape, public, controlled, and impossible to spin. My mind kept returning to the one place that mattered most to my father's ego, a gathering where his pride was on display. An engagement renewal would draw the whole family, the neighbors, and even the neighbors' neighbors. He loved pomp. I could use that same stage. I rehearsed what I would say until my words felt like steel. I mapped out the evening. Raza would seat himself near the podium. Nida would be ready with my phone to play the recording. Imran's silence or support would not sway me anymore. I would speak regardless. I planned the moment carefully, not to humiliate Sarah for spectacle, but to show how she had manipulated everyone by weaponizing my private pain for applause.
There were risks. If the family sided with Sarah, I would be further isolated. If my father reacted with anger, it could shatter the fragile support I'd managed to gather. If I failed, I would have nothing left. But those risks tasted better than a life that accepted being erased. I slept less, prepared more, and felt something unfamiliar, a quiet hunger that was not cruelty,
but reclaiming. One night, as I laid out my speech, Nida squeezed my hand and said, "You're not the broken one here, Maya. You're the only one brave enough to tell the truth." I answered, my voice low and certain, "Then I'll make the truth impossible to ignore." For the first time since the dinner, fear and clarity walked together. I had chosen my battlefield, gathered my witnesses, and stainless steel calm settled over me. The plan felt dangerous because it dared to strip the family's shining facade in front of everyone who had believed it. It felt personal because Saar had used my secret as a ladder. The night of the renewal arrived like a slow drum. I stood behind the curtain, the lights humming, the music floating into the hall. My heart was steady now, not because I was unafraid, but because I had chosen this. I was ready to take the stage and let the truth speak through me. And then, as the MC announced the next item and the crowd leaned forward, I stepped out, and the world hesitated with me. The night shimmered with false perfection, golden lights, laughter echoing through the decorated hall, and the clinking of glasses pretending nothing had ever broken in this family. I stood near the back, my fingers cold against the microphone I had hidden beneath my shawl. The engagement renewal was in full swing. Saar sparkled in her sequined dress, moving through the crowd like a queen who believed she had won. My father sat proudly at the head table, his smile stiff but satisfied. And I, the daughter who had been erased, watched them celebrate a lie. As the speeches began, I could feel my heartbeat syncing with the rhythm of the music. One after another, relatives stood up to praise Saar, her grace, her sacrifice, her love for family. Every word was a needle pressing deeper into old wounds. When my father raised his glass and said, "Tonight, we honor the daughter who kept this family's dignity intact," something in me clicked. That was my cue. I stepped forward. The chatter dimmed a little when they saw me approach the stage. A few confused smiles, a few whispers. Saar's face froze for a split second. She hadn't expected me to show up, much less stand where she stood. "Can I say something?" I asked. My voice was steady, soft, but it carried. My father hesitated, irritation flickering across his face. "Maya, this isn't the—" "It's exactly the right time," I interrupted. The MIC amplified my words, and the hall fell silent. I looked at the crowd, at the cousins who had gossiped behind my back, at the aunts who had called me sensitive, at the brother who never chose a side. My eyes landed on Sarah last. She smiled thinly, trying to regain control. "You all think you know what dignity looks like," I began. "You think it's smiles, silence, and pretending everything's fine. But dignity isn't pretending, it's surviving truth." A ripple moved through the room. I glanced at Nida near the back. She nodded. I pulled out my phone and connected it to the speakers. A soft click, then my own voice filled the hall, trembling, breaking, confessing the pain I'd once shared in confidence during therapy. The same voice Saar had mocked, recorded, and leaked. "I just wish my father would see me, not what he wants me to be." The audio echoed. Gasps rose from the crowd. I let it play, watched my father's face tighten, saw Saar pale. When it ended, I spoke again. That's my voice. My therapy session. Something no one should have heard, except Saar made sure everyone did. Saar's eyes darted around the hall, searching for an escape. "That's not true," she shouted, her voice trembling. "You're twisting." "Really?" I cut in. "Then maybe you can explain these." One by one, I projected screenshots on the screen behind me, her messages, her cruel laughter, her words. Let her break down. The sympathy will come to me. Every line landed like thunder. The whispers turned sharp. My father looked at Saar in disbelief. You did this?" he asked, voice shaking. She tried to speak, but her words stumbled. "I was protecting the family's image. By destroying your sister," I said, stepping closer. "By selling my pain to buy approval." The silence was thick now. You could feel the air holding its breath. My father turned toward me, guilt beginning to creep through his stern mask. "Maya, I didn't know." "No," I said gently, "you didn't want to know." His eyes fell, and for the first time, I saw regret flicker across his proud face. I took a deep breath. "You taught me that family means honor. But honor isn't inherited, it's earned. And tonight, I'm earning mine back." I handed the MIC to the host and stepped down. Behind me, chaos began to unravel. Guests murmured.
Aunts gasped. Sawa tried to reach for my father's hand, but he withdrew it. Raza stood quietly near the wall, watching with a mix of sorrow and pride. I walked out of the hall as the lights flickered against my back, the sound of shattered illusion ringing behind me. At the door, I paused and turned one last time. Sawa's face was a storm of panic and shame, my father's one of hollow realization. I said, softly but clearly, "Truth has a voice, and it doesn't whisper forever." And with that, I walked away, calm, steady, free. The next morning felt strangely quiet, almost too quiet. After years of noise, whispers, and accusations, the silence felt like peace. I sat by my window, watching the sun rise over the neighborhood rooftops, a cup of tea warming my hands. My reflection in the glass looked tired, but free. For the first time in years, I didn't flinch when I looked at myself. That night had changed everything. The engagement had ended before dessert was served. Guests had walked out in murmuring disbelief. My father hadn't tried to stop them. He just sat there, staring at the floor, realizing how blind pride had cost him a daughter's trust. And Sawa, my perfect sister, had been exposed, her reputation collapsing in the same hall where she once humiliated me. I didn't stay to watch her tears. I didn't need to. Sometimes victory doesn't look like applause. It looks like walking away without bitterness. In the following days, messages flooded my phone. Apologies, excuses, explanations. My father called several times. I didn't reject the calls, but I didn't answer them either. Some wounds don't need words. They need time and truth. My mother, though, came quietly one afternoon. She didn't say I'm sorry. She didn't need to. She just sat beside me, held my hand, and whispered, "You did what I was too afraid to do." I didn't cry, not this time. I just nodded and looked toward the garden, where light fell gently through the leaves. Sawa moved out soon after. Rumor said she went to stay with an aunt in another city, trying to recover her image. But I didn't follow the gossip. Let her rebuild her life in whatever way she needed. Mine was just beginning. I returned to work, started writing again, and slowly reconnected with friends I had lost during those dark months. They said I seemed different now. Maybe I was. Pain had burned away the fragile parts of me, leaving behind only what was real: dignity, self-respect, and quiet strength. One evening, my father finally came to visit. He looked older, smaller somehow. He didn't speak for a long time. When he finally did, his voice trembled. "I thought I was protecting our name," he said. "But I was destroying our family." I met his eyes and said softly, "Truth protects what lies destroy." He lowered his head, and for the first time, I felt something shift. Not forgiveness, but understanding. When he left, I realized I didn't need an apology to move on. My peace didn't depend on anyone's guilt. It came from knowing I had faced humiliation and survived with grace. I walked to the mirror again. My reflection smiled back, calm, unbroken, whole. That night, I wrote one final line in my journal, a truth that would stay with me forever. Dignity isn't taken by others, it's surrendered by silence. And I had finally learned never to surrender mine again. As the lights of the city flickered outside, I closed the window and whispered to myself, "They may have destroyed my peace once, but they can never touch my self-respect again." I turned off the lamp, letting darkness settle softly around me, not as a reminder of pain, but as proof that the night always ends.